Hi everyone, welcome. I'm preparing to check in on a couple worm bins, and I've kind of gotten a little bit of a jump start because usually we'll remove all the plastic covers and stuff like that together. However, I was in here earlier just taking some footage, little close-up shots using my SLR camera that also shoots video of some of these little tiny snails, and I thought that some close-ups of these little guys would be interesting because, you know, get this big view of the both bins next to each other. You could definitely see stuff cruising around, but getting a sense of what it is that we're looking at could be difficult. So I wanted to get some close-ups. And the funny thing about these things, you know, I used to look at them and I thought they were curled up millipedes. Every time I would look at one of these things, I thought it was a curled up millipede. And I remember watching some other worm farming channel where the girl kept talking about how she had snails in her worm bin, and I thought to myself, snails in the worm bin? It makes no sense. But I've got them now, and now it makes complete sense. So the systems were last fed 10 days ago, and I think the interval prior to that last feeding was 14 days, so we've tightened up the interval between feedings a little bit. I knew that last time and the time prior I had fed the same exact stuff, pretty much carrot peels, and I fed the same way, which was different from my normal feeding method. Usually I dig a pit, submerge the food down the middle, but last couple times we've just been spreading the food out across the top surface, and every time the food has gone away completely. And I'm even seeing a few little scraps of newspaper. Newspaper was draped out over the food at the end. I think we might have even sprinkled the feeding with some of my worm chow. So I guess what I was after by doing this was to not concentrate worm traffic right down into the middle of the bins. I was more interested at this point to really see worm traffic throughout the whole system, all four corners of the bin, not getting the worms all jazzed to come right down to the middle of the bin and all hang out there eating their feeding, but to have food all over the place. So past couple feedings, I just tried my best to just spread the food out all the way out as far as I could to the edge in all directions, so that worms would come up and feed, and then if they wanted to go back down, then they could, but they would be evenly motivated throughout the entire surface to be there, you know, instead of all being kind of gravitated towards the center or something like that, because, you know, perhaps that was where the feedings had been. So yeah, the past few feedings here were definitely unique to these bins here. Just kind of a new thing I was trying. Definitely a break from my typical feeding method. So I think the material in these systems is coming along so nice. We've been doing our best to just allow the worms to work down any sort of residual bedding bits. We did leave those two top sheets of newspaper. One of them was really, really tattered already, so I knew that that one would be gone for sure, but it does seem like they came up for that top coating of newspaper and gobbled that up too. Because, you know, as long as you're not putting in any sort of leaves or bedding or paper of any sort, you know, they probably are craving a bedding type material. Not so much for the purposes of bedding, like to be in it or to live in it, but more for the content of it as far as a nutritional item in their diet. Because the stuff that they're getting, all these kitchen scraps, you know, stuff like this, mushroom, old banana peel, your typical worm bin feeding is usually kitchen scraps, which has a high nitrogen content, so they typically refer to that stuff as sort of the nitrogen rich side of their diet. But then the bedding, in these cases there's not a lot of bedding though. Their bedding is typically paper, leaves, stuff like that. So I do have a couple nice new replacement top coating pieces of paper set up for both of these systems. And I thought we would feed the same way as last time, is just to sprinkle the foods that we've got for them out across the top surface, cover it up again with newspaper, just like we did last time, and then return the bubble wrap. I mean, I've even thought about possibly letting these systems get a little bit of airflow, a little bit more airflow by leaving off the bubble wrap and possibly letting them dry or begin to dry a little bit. But I don't think we're ready for that. You know, I'd really like to see all kinds of larger chunks of stuff like this. This might be cardboard or paper or something. I even see strips here, little fragments of the prepared bedding that I make using the shredded paper and cardboard that I get out of my shredder. So there's still some work to be done in here, and as long as everything remains nice and damp, the worms will feel really comfortable moving in and out of that nice damp material, and the dampness will also help contribute to the breakdown of the materials, keeping everything nice and soft and readily consumable by the worms. So I think it might be a little bit early still to start driving towards the drying of these bins, but I've definitely considered it a little bit in the past already, but we're definitely not there yet. In fact, you know, I definitely think that bin number 1 is the one that probably could use it the most, because it's a little bit more damp than what I'm feeling here in bin number 2. So I think we've done a good job aerating and tilling the contents of both systems. Definitely blending in a whole bunch of snails throughout the material. I wonder what that really results in. Do the snails have the ability to kind of navigate their way through or burrow through the material and find their way to the surface, or have I just kind of buried a bunch of snails alive, and will that be the end of them? Could that be the possible strategy to eliminating the snails in a worm bin? I don't know. So let's proceed here. I've got really frozen mushroom here, and I attempted in the kitchen before bringing the stuff down here to kind of break this stuff up. I mean, here's just the whole head of a mushroom. This is going to stay as a whole object, I believe. But if there's other bits here that are kind of smaller, I'd like to try to dislodge them from one another and spread them throughout the top surface here. You know, maybe this banana could even be sort of segmented a little bit better, so that it's not in a pile, but rather almost all of its edible surfaces are just in contact with the bedding below. And then hopefully that gives worms maximum access to that as a food source. Let's do that here too. Then we can get in all this mushroom. And I don't know if you've ever had mushroom around that was just left around a little bit too long and started to spoil, but spoiled mushrooms really do not smell good. They're actually quite foul in odor. And I can here and there sense the odor. So I think that this stuff was already in pretty terrible shape when it was put into the freezer to prevent further breakdown and preserve it in that state for worm bin feeding. So I'm usually anxious to get these mushroom feedings taken care of and covered up pretty quickly so that I don't have to smell it. Alright, have we kept our distance from the outer edge? I like the idea of just not being too close to the edge, because I know that my bubble wrap plastic doesn't really cover entirely. So I just want to make sure that all the food is below the plastic bubble wrap, providing a nice spot for moisture to recirculate, and make sure that the feeding area is nice and damp and inviting for worms to hang out in. So here's one of the top coverings I created. Just wondering if I've forgotten anything. This was really meant to come in here as not just so much a top covering, perhaps as more of a stand-in for bedding, should the worms crave something that's more carbon rich like paper. They've got it, you know. And if they want the nitrogen rich foods that are their feedings, well, they've got that too. So this way it gives them a choice, just to make sure we're not skewing their diet too much and allowing for the balance in their diet to be lacking of a carbon rich food substance. And maybe that's exactly what they want, you know. Maybe that's the reason it all got gobbled up off the top surface, because maybe they were really craving this stuff and it is in such short supply here. So that's it for our check-in. You know, I had a whole bunch of interesting tidbits to share, and I don't even know if we talked about any of the details, but really quick, the age of the bin, 234, feeding number 21 going in today, right down to even a specific number that we estimate these systems to have been originally launched with in terms of worm populations. But, you know, think about it. It was so long ago, things change. All right, everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, Please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.